Welcome to another episode of the Plant Cunning Podcast and a special spring quarter Aries Ingress astrological New Year episode with ZamboniFunk, our resident mundane astrologer. Zamboni, how are you doing?
Oh, you know, we're just in here living the dream, one day at a time, baby boy.
Us too, just chugging along, as they say.
The little engine that could over here.
Yes.
I hope so.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot going on. We're really excited. I've been working on a book called the Zodiac Garden Guide, which is a book of astrological gardening. It's an astrological gardening manual focused around a zodiac garden, which is not a concept that I invented. It's something that is there in the tradition, but there aren't very many examples of it or how to make it. And so I took the opportunity I have my own zodiac garden that I built. And I show how to make a zodiac garden in this book, and I get into like how you pick the plants, focusing on traditional sources, electional astrology, when to choose the right time to plant things, and all that kind of stuff, and using traditional sources. So I'm very excited about it. It's coming out in early April, April 4th. It will be available as long as the creeks don't rise and the Lord wills. So that's one thing we're excited about. And also, I'm still doing Vedic astrology readings. You can email me at askIsaachill@gmail.com to set one up if you want to. And Zamboni, I know you've got some interesting things. People can also get astrology readings with you at ZamboniFunk.com.
That is correct. You can go to ZamboniFunk.com for astrology readings. Also, if you like what we do here and you like the way that I'm interpreting things and you want to figure out how to learn and you want to figure out how to interpret astrology for your damn self, because it can get expensive if you start asking me every week about what's going on, that kind of thing. If you want to do that for yourself, then you can learn. I have a fundamentals course that is called Astrology from the Ground Up. People generally call it the most relatable and intelligible astrology course that they've ever taken. So I am very proud of it, and that is available at at ZamboniFunk.com. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff there. There's music there, and you can get readings there. And I also have been working on. I have been saying jokingly that I started a cult, but really, a cult is a religion that has not stood the test of time, and a religion is a cult that has stood the test of time. And so I have developed a spiritual approach that has not yet stood the test of time. So is it a cult? I don't know, kinda. It doesn't have me at the center of it, which is my very favorite thing about it. It is not at all about me, but it is a way of understanding the world, and that takes ancient spiritual understanding and marries it with the theory of evolution and the way that selective pressure actually operates. We can notice, we can observe that stuff is going on in the world. And so, but because we are in this moment of such important social change and intellectual change, then it's going to be important for us to figure out how to navigate both of those things at the same time. And so I find myself to be in a unique position to be able to speak to those things. And so that course is available for free online at YouTube. So that's on my YouTube channel. It's called Which Way to Wisdom. So if you just type that in the search bar, you'll be off to the races.
Cool.
Awesome.
So it's 2026. It's the springtime. Technically, we've got our maple sap here. We're drinking it.
It is snowing.
Yum.
Now.
There's snow on the ground. Yesterday was 60 degrees, and everything melted. And then, well, not everything. There's still a little bit of snow in the corners. Now woke up this morning and there's snow everywhere again. So that's Central New York for you. But it's spring, and this is the astrological new year. So we've been doing this every year, I know, for a few years. And last year we did an Aries Ingress chart. And we'll get to that in a second. But how do you think this last year has been, the 2025?
Oh, how?
Yeah, compared
how
to like
has compared to what?
Well, what you thought it would be.
Oh, Um, uh, I was very excited about Jupiter in Cancer.
Mm,
And what I have found mostly about Jupiter in Cancer is that it has mostly stopped things from being as catastrophic as they could have been,
Mhm.
right.
rather than being the unmitigated good that I had expected or hoped it would be.
Okay.
Given that I have Cancer rising, I was expecting this to be amazing for me specifically.
Yes.
And it's been cool,
Yeah.
but like hasn't been so amazing as that. But it has been very good for taking some of the more monstrous configurations and being like, don't worry about it. It's gonna be okay. Like, hold it together. Just keep on doing your thing. Like Jupiter in Cancer has been really kind of underwhelming that way, but perhaps that is going to be a good look. And that's actually one of the things that I'm looking forward to in Jupiter and Leo as well, with this new understanding of not, I mean, I knew that already, but like with this understanding of Jupiter as not necessarily all good, everything all the time, but maybe not as catastrophic as it could have been. Once Jupiter moves into Leo and then we start having eclipses in Leo as well, then my hope is that Jupiter is going to make it so that those eclipses don't get so insane that things become unmanageable. So that's my new thing going forward, is that's the hope that I have here.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt too, looking back on the year and the Aries Ingress chart, and looking at my, how I analyzed it. It seemed like, in a way, a little bit glowing. It was like optimistic, and I think we need to take a step back when looking at where we are at even these years. And the way I see it, my perspective, is that we're in a larger historical perspective, we're in a period of crisis, right? And like we're in a period
Mhm.
of decline. So I'm hoping that I'm not hoping, but I'm anticipating that every year is not going to be better than the previous year. In fact, probably worse, at least for a while. So in terms of that broader scale, um, the optimism is just, it's not going to be as bad as it could be.
Mhm.
But it's like this year, perhaps that's where things get, there's a little bit less of the optimism from my perspective. It seems like this is the year where things really kind of change, and they've already started, you know. And
Yeah,
and that's the thing. It's like things really started, the Iran situation started in the eclipse window, this last eclipse window, which
sure
just,
did.
there was a 6 week period where kind of, things happened in the Iran situation, but also personally, like there was a lot, like it's hard to do anecdotal things, but like we lost our puppy. We had a lot of friends who like their dogs died, or there were other things going on. Like there was a lot,
8 dogs died in the eclipse window that I know of. It's crazy.
Hmm.
I
Oh,
don't
and
know what
interesting.
that's about. Yeah.
yeah, and also like all these other kind of things we don't really need to talk about, but friends who are having crises.
Right.
This eclipse period seemed to be more intense than usual. And
Yeah,
also,
it was more intense than I was expecting,
yeah.
certainly.
And it's like everything happened in that window, and then also it's like clearly eclipse energy because Trump, Ayatollah Khamenei, both born on the eclipse, and
Hmm.
it happened like the major military operations happened literally right before the second eclipse. So it's like that's clearly eclipse situations. But I was also looking at the Aries Ingress from last year, and it was right on, it was during this eclipse situation too. So it's like I think that actually the eclipses were taking precedence over the Aries ingress in a certain way.
Hmm. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, the eclipses definitely seem like they are, especially once we get into the geopolitical space, then eclipses have a lot to do with the sovereign rulers of nations and stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is very likely to be a big deal in that space, right? Like eclipses are about the shining light of the crown, and then you don't get that light anymore. And so, what does that mean about how we're going to deal with things as a nation and stuff like that? And that can be especially impactful in the lives of individuals, especially of people who have stuff configured to the eclipse for in whatever way. But I would definitely expect the eclipses to have major ramifications on the world stage because that's kind of what they are.
Yeah. Right.
So
Right.
we can learn that moving forward. Maybe
Yeah.
like, you know, one of the things that I have been thinking about here is that don't I don't personally feel like I have a lot of influence on the world stage. You
Hmm.
know, this is one of the things that I talk to about my audience a lot, or to my audience a lot, is like I don't think that I have a single billionaire in my audience.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't think I have a single world leader in my
Mhm.
audience at all. And so I care very much about what is happening in the sky so that I can use it at my regular people level in
Right.
order to drive my own life or how I can build community within my actual sphere of influence. And so
Yeah.
I have I do care about what happens at the geopolitical level, mostly because I care about like what prices are going to be like and stuff like this. You know what I mean? Because that is going to have an effect on the real life that I live. And but you know, I haven't found that mm, major geopolitical predictions are that worthwhile. Now, perhaps I'm
Yeah.
saying that because I keep missing them. So, you know, like the when the Iran war started, I looked back at the chart and I was like, oh, it was right there. Like
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I could have seen that coming, and but I got so excited about Venus in Pisces, and
Yeah.
just because like an exalted Venus or a dignified Venus for me specifically typically looks like affection from beautiful people in my life. Like this is like I tend to get laid under these skies and this kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like I like a dignified Venus. And so when in my forecast I was like, "Oh my God, dignified Venus, I love it so much," right? But then we can remember that like I'm reminded of Helen of Troy, right?
Uh-huh.
Who is the most beautiful woman anyone had ever seen, and whole countries go to war about that shit. And so the like Venus as planet of war
Mm.
is a real thing that I just looked right past. I
Oh
just
yeah.
looked past that shit. And you know, I have the same thing happened in the Ukraine war where it was like it was there in the chart and I just didn't pay attention to it. I just looked right past that shit. And so I've taken a couple of major L's on that. And so part of the maybe that's part of my justification. It was like, oh well, I really care most about what happens in my life and the scale that I'm on. Maybe that's because I'm like taking these L's, but I do think that that is a useful perspective for me at least.
Mhm.
Well, there's also something to, um, spheres of or wheelhouses, I guess. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
people who are mundane astrologers who are up to date on all the geopolitical events and know all the ins and outs of like of political history and what's going on are more likely to make good predictions, partially just because they know what all the full context. Whereas, I'm much more interested in my garden,
Hmm.
what the weather's doing, like
Right.
how that's affecting things. Um, and I'm not as really as interested in the major geopolitical events for the same reasons that you're saying. It's like they affect me and they affect everybody, but it's like not that's not where my area of expertise actually is. you know
Hmm. Hmm.
so and really, like, for us too, it's like most of the people listening, I assume, are herbalists and magicians, and probably not a billionaire among if there is a billionaire listening, hit me up.
Yeah, we have
I
a Patreon.
but I doubt it. um and
And thank
yeah,
you for listening. If you're here,
Yeah.
shout out to you. You know
Yeah,
what I
you
mean?
know what?
Like I
right.
Props.
yeah.
Seriously. Yeah, you're doing Good.
Well, that's what we are. You know, we're just chugging along, trying to make ends meet, and we're normal people, we're a little maybe like hyper fixated on certain things like astrology and gardening, but for the most part, we're pretty normal
Yeah.
people. So it's good to know to know that, and take that into account, when we're looking at these charts and making predictions. Like, it is important to know where we actually have knowledge and expertise.
Yeah, and it's also important to remember that geopolitical events are not the only things that matter. Like,
Hmm.
just because I don't have
Right.
influence on the geopolitical stage doesn't mean that my life is not meaningful. Like,
Right. Exactly.
the meaning that I have in my life is actually meaningful to me and to my sphere of influence, the people that are around me, the children that I know who I'm trying to make into grown people who can handle the world that's coming. Like these kinds of things are legitimately meaningful. And you don't necessarily have to get all the way to the butterfly effect for, this idea that like the flapping of the butterfly's wings can turn into a tsunami a little bit later, if, through the processes of the world or whatever. You don't have to do all that necessarily to just be like, look, what matters to me matters because it matters to me. I am the world. And so this matters in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very true.
I think it's easy
So,
to fall into a place of nihilistic meaninglessness. And
yeah.
in the face of ongoing wars and economic crisis and all of that. And I don't think that we need to do that. And I think that um, astrology illustrates how meaning is baked into both the grand stage and the small stage. And it's
Right.
important for us to remember where we are in that. And even on the small, and it's, like, okay, so my life is the small stage. Well, I'm also composed of trillions of cells that have a stage that's much smaller than mine, right?
Yeah.
So, like,
And
how big is the
also,
stage really?
right. And also from first person perspective, this is the big stage.
I heard that.
So from your perspective, looking at the year ahead, looking at this uh
Hmm.
this astrological year starting on the 20th of March
Hmm.
2026, there are some major events, astrologically happening.
Def.
Um, so what is your perspective on this year?
Okay, so the first thing that we got to remember is, or that we need to notice about this ingress is that it features Mercury retrograde stationing direct in Pisces conjunct the North Node.
Hmm.
So Mercury is the planet of communication. It's the planet of intelligence and understanding. One of the things that I always say about Mercury is that it is, and communication generally is two-sided. It is both expression and impression. It is both speaking and listening. It is both writing and reading. So it's both of those things. Both of those things are inherent to what Mercury is, right? And all of that looks wildly confused in this moment. And not just wildly confused, but also brash, like very confidently confused. That's one of the things that like um, I was so surprised about when the Iran war started. I was like, this is clearly not so. I think what they were thinking in the White House, I'm projecting here, I have no idea. But what I think what they were thinking was shit went so well in Venezuela. It was a quick decapitation and then it was done and it was like, oh, look how quick and easy that was, right? And the chart for that is really interesting. It was January 3rd. That's actually the same day. It was a great election. It was the same day that I released my music, my most recent song, Java.
Hmm.
Um, it was a it was a Mars Venus conjunction in Capricorn
Hmm.
with the moon conjunct Jupiter in Cancer, opposite
Hmm.
to that.
Hmm.
So it was a great election, right? So it was like quick and just bam, handled the thing, and it was great. And like a Mars in Capricorn looks really good and all that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think what they were doing was they were like, we're going to do that again. And it's going to be so quick and easy. But nobody bothered to notice that Mercury was retrograde, which is crazy to me because Reagan had an astrologer. Come on, dude. Like, I thought you were Reagan number two. What are we doing? But so, um, the, so Mercury is deeply retrograde in Pisces with this like, with the eclipses going on, and so it's all shadowy and nobody knows anything about what's going on, right? So it's clearly not going to be over in any quick kind of way. And I would guess that as Mercury goes retrograde in the water signs this year, each time that happens, we're going to see a resurgence of this situation, right? And so what we can notice with that is that big, loud, wrong information is the main event. That's what's happening out here. Like the information is not intelligible, and you're going to be incentivized to be like, no, I really know what's happening, and to move on it as if you do, and to move boldly and powerfully, and then find yourself mired in a bunch of bullshit. So this is one of the things that I talk about in Which Way to Wisdom all the time is answers do not help you as much as questions do, because answers close down your options. Answers do not help you to see things that you didn't know about already. Whereas open or questions give you an open orientation to the world that can help you to see things. It helps you with your unknown unknowns. There's a whole bunch of shit you don't know that you don't know. And so when you're asking questions all the time, then that can give you an inroad into like, oh, there's good insight in that direction that I maybe want to know about. And so how do I incorporate that into the model so that I can do things better? So I think the play at the small scale level is having that open orientation to the world and asking questions rather than being like, I know what the answer is, especially since the supreme leader types are operating as if they have the answers. And so because they're clearly doing things wrong, it's going to be really easy to be like, not that, I have the answer and it's not that, right? But I don't think that that's the play either, right? The play, I think, is to maintain this open orientation and this questioning attitude in order to work things out. So coming back to your question about the Ingress chart here, like it looks wildly confused. It looks deeply confused about the narrative in general. You know, we've still got this open and active Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries, which is confused about what is even real, you know? And so in this information environment where it's impossible to tell what's true or what's real, because who knows what has been deep faked, who knows what, you know, it's the narrative environment was always going to be spin. Like the media was always going to spin you, but now it has fractured so that you can't even get the same spin that everybody else is getting. And so everyone is being spun at all times, but in different directions, and it's hard to know what is happening at all. And so we just have to take that as the ground truth. No one knows is the ground truth. And that's a difficult thing to do, but that is going to be the only way to actually come to some understanding of anything, is like understanding, like, I know that I don't know anything at all. Shout out to Socrates.
Yeah. Yeah, I really feel like that is one of the key takeaways for this moment in time that is actionable and helpful to everybody listening, is to know that whatever you hear is probably not true, but whatever you think is also probably not true. And I think it's very crucial. So let me just pull up the chart real quick, just to like show for those watching. because it's I think it's nice to see. And we won't be on here very long, but just so we see, this is the ingress of Aries of of the sun, 0 degree at 0 degrees Aries. So the ingress of the sun into Aries, which is exactly where this Saturn Neptune conjunction, this epochally changing, aeon changing um, conjunction happened just a month ago. And so as soon as the sun moves into Aries, the sun is hitting Neptune. So closely conjunct Neptune. And so Neptune is this planet of confusion, of mysticism, of obscurity. It's we just know that we don't know what's going on. And then we've got Gemini rising for this chart for the exact moment that the sun enters Aries, tropical Aries, and in here the lord of Gemini is Mercury. Mercury is almost exactly conjunct the North Node by the true node, and is stationing direct. So it's retrograde, but it's at the moment it's still retrograde, but it's stationing and conjunct Mars with a trine from Jupiter. So I think this is a very interesting combination too. Um,
Hmm. It's very
this
gung ho.
very gung ho. There's a lot of energy and action, but that Mercury is in its fall, right?
Hmm.
In Pisces, Mercury in Pisces doesn't know what's going on. Definitely doesn't know what's going on, and is considered mute as well in the water signs. So this is a
Hmm.
this is a Mercury that and that Mercury, and it's also conjunct the North Node, which expands things,
Hmm.
and Mars, which gives energy to things, with a trine from Jupiter. That's a very beneficial aspect. It's like also expansion, saying yes, right? So that Jupiter is saying yes to
Confusion.
confused, energetic,
Hmm.
warlike communication that doesn't really know what it's saying. Yeah, just what you said, basically. But like, it also to me, it does look more like a war situation with that Mars
Hmm.
conjunct the North Node. The North Node conjunct the Mars just like makes makes malefics worse. You know, the the trine from Jupiter might be that there's some like that does give it, in one way it might give it some more wisdom, but another way it could just be like, yes, go to war, let's make it war bigger.
Hmm. Hmm.
uh but it's hard to, it's hard to tell for me, but that is a really interesting combination. And so I just want to show
Yeah.
those are the two main things for me, is this stationing direct retrograde Mercury as the Lord of the Ascendant, conjunct the North Node and Mars with a trine from Jupiter, and then this Sun at 0 degrees Aries conjunct Neptune and Saturn.
Mm.
Hmm.
And there are a couple things, like there are some things I could read about that, but it doesn't look great for the executive branch of the U.S.
Hmm.
either. The sun represents the executive branch. The sun
Hmm.
conjunct Neptune and Saturn, not good for the. That's the simple way of saying it, but not good for the executive branch. This is also Congress. The 11th house is Congress, and all this is happening in the 11th house. So it looks like a lot of legislation that wants to get passed, but there's a lot of debate and a lot of confusion in that as well. And so it doesn't look like there's I don't know how much it's going to actually be able to get past, but there's a lot of energy in that Congress, in the Congress. Um, and then the 10th house is also the executive branch, and we've got that heavily afflicted Mercury with that nice benefic, you know, trine from Jupiter. So there's a lot but it's complicated, but it doesn't look good to me for the executive branch. So that's the long and short of it. I'm not going to get in read all of the things, but I was looking at, this is the mundane astrology book. reading the works of Raphael and what he says. So I don't want to get you should yeah, I won't get into it. But that's just what I see with that chart. Is there
Mhm.
anything that you want to say about that?
Yeah, so I like that you bring up Raphael every time. It gives us something to root into and something to, like it gives us a point to sort of circle around here. Um, the idea that this is not good for the executive branch, I think, is likely true, but I don't think that they see it that way. So
Right.
the sun is exalted in Aries, which is
Yeah.
a very powerful position for the sun to be in. And so that, to my mind, gives it dominion over that Neptune and Saturn. Like the sun is going to be more powerful than that Saturn is. And so even though Saturn is right there and is going to be kind of annoying to the sun, I don't think that it's going to be a legitimate obstacle to the sun. And so this to me reads like a push toward tyranny.
Hmm.
So I'm going to guess that Mercury and Mars trine Jupiter is going to be pro-war, right? So that is just like I'm not forecasting anything at this point, right? We're already in a war, so it's not a like it
Right. Yeah.
like this is not that difficult. But what I'm saying here is that it's not going to stop, right? It looks like it wants to escalate and escalate again and escalate further from that. So
Yeah.
it looks like more and more of the thing. And so then as that happens, then we're likely to see something like war powers taking it, like in times of war, then maybe free speech gets restricted or something like that, right? Like we're looking at more top-down control from the executives because yeah, it looks to me like a push toward tyranny. I think about Saturn in Aries as being associated with tyranny also. It's Saturn is the disciplinarian, is the management sphere and this kind of thing. And in Aries, it cares a lot about the short term, doesn't care very much about the long term. Saturn's whole job is to care about the long term, but in Aries doesn't do a very good job of that. And so this to me looks like an increase in control and power dynamics. And that I do think ultimately breaks. That to me
Yeah.
looks like it is a very brittle situation that isn't likely to work, especially if we think about how we live in the era of air now.
Yeah.
And so, in the era of air, we are unlikely to see the consolidation of imperial power, but rather we are likely to see things spreading out. We are likely to see giant empires sort of crumbling and turning into many city states that are probably constantly fighting with each other instead of the like one unified thing that fights or that might be like the unipolar American state, for example, or that is fighting with the one enemy abroad or something like that. It's like
Mhm.
the all of the neighbors are fighting each other kind of
Yeah.
situation.
Mhm.
So it doesn't look to me like it's good for the executive branch, but I think that they will think that this is great for us until it breaks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't think we're at the breaking point yet.
So I guess there are a couple other things I want to just say about this chart too before we move on to. So the first thing is that Gemini rising means that this chart is valid for 6 months. So this is like
Mhm.
this spring and summer into September that this particular chart is valid for. Um, the other thing is that well, so the sun is for every Aries ingress, the sun is going into Aries. You know what I mean? So I don't know
Mhm.
if the sun being exalted in Aries matters as much for the Aries ingress because it happens every year. You know what I mean? Um,
Well, sure, yeah, but I mean, if
Mhm.
this chart is good for 6 months, and then we're going to be looking at the Libra one, then that'll be the sun moving into its fall, and that'll be
yeah.
uh, a different solar situation.
But I also think that the sun conjunct Neptune and a debilitate like in the fallen um Saturn is still an afflicted sun, you know?
Yeah,
I
I'm
would
not making a sun talisman at this time.
right. Um and I do want to read one thing from this is HS Green. It says the sun in conjunction or bad aspect with Saturn. This, for an Aries ingress or an ingress. Unfortunate for the monarch and government. They may incur unpopularity or obstacles and delay, uh, obstruct state affairs and the passage of legislation.
Mhm.
Sometimes differences arise between the monarch and statesman or between the upper and lower houses of the legislator. The health of the nation may be unsatisfactory, unfortunate for state or municipal officials, for mining, building, and the land.
Mhm.
So, and there's a similar thing, Sun in bad aspect with Neptune. Unpopularity or misfortune of some kind for the monarch or government. Failure of measures, disorder and confusion, loss of by-elections. So it's,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
Government may be defeated. The power, reputation, or life of some statesman, prominent person, or royalty may be in danger. Social scandals come to light.
Oh.
So, um, that's just what they say. And I do want to also, there's another thing that I noticed too that I think is important is Jupiter, because the Jupiter is all by himself over here, but he's trining the Lord of the Ascendant.
Mhm.
Square, he's giving trines and squares to so it's an important um point. The Jupiter being in the second house is also good for the economy, which I wonder how that will play out. But the Jupiter giving this trine with Mars and this they're very close trine, applying trine, right? Um, that shows to me what I see as a buildup of religion. So, and we see this happening already. We can think about in terms of the second religiosity, where after this age of reason, where everything's focused on reason, there's this second age of where people are, and you can see this with people coming, converting to Christianity or Islam,
Or
or
starting their own cults.
or starting their
Gonna
own
say.
cults or getting involved in esotericism or right. um but I see this in a time period where there's a lot of confusion. People go back to these, like, to the religion as a way to bolster
Mhm.
themselves, so I see this also being a major thing happening this summer too. um so those are just a few things that I wanted to point out about the chart before
Mhm.
we move on. The other thing is that I did look at last year's chart and what I said, and I think on the whole, like I did mention this at the beginning, but like it was a little bit optimistic. And as a whole, this last year was not so bad considering everything going on, you know?
Mhm.
It also said a buildup of military power if Mars was unafflicted, but not outright war. And so war didn't really happen until a few weeks ago, right?
Mhm.
But it's interesting that it happened in that eclipse window. So that's why I'm also thinking the eclipses were kind of more important than the Aries ingress of last year, because the Aries ingress fell on the eclipse window. Um, and I also, looking at the chart from last year, I think I underestimated how important Mars being debilitated or in Mars in Cancer was. So that was actually a more afflicted Mars by being in Cancer. And
Mhm.
that's another reason why I'm seeing the Mercury in Pisces as not very good, because that's he's opposite from the his exaltation. He's not doing so good with the North Node and Mars. So
Mhm.
that's just that's kind of all I want to say about the Ingress chart. But is there anything from that you want to dig into?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. Let's go in reverse order. So the Mercury thing, I think the main thing to remember with that is how very important it is to control the narrative. That is the main thing that's going to be happening in geopolitical conflict as well as in wherever you are in your life. The main thing is going to be controlling the narrative, getting people to think in the same way as you is more important than actually effecting the thing that you said that you did. People need to think that you did the thing that you did. that you said you did, more than you need to do the thing that you said you were going to do. That is the very most important thing. Okay, so then what you read about the sun in Aries, I don't think is in conflict with what I said at all. So I think very much that, like, okay, so if Trump doesn't figure out a way to make the middle class richer, or like everyday people in the United States feel like they are richer, then this dude is losing the midterm elections and is immediately cooked after that. He's going to get impeached and then probably going to go to jail for the last, for the last 4 years of his life or whatever. And so that's probably like, so that is very much in keeping with what you said there, right? Now, we can notice that Jupiter is in the second house there, and that Jupiter is important here. And what I said at the beginning is that Jupiter often makes things not as catastrophic as they could otherwise have been. And so I think that it is very likely that we're going to see that kind of all of this concentration of power. And so you said something about like the conflict between statesmen and the emperor or whatever. Like, obviously, like
Yeah.
Trump is going through that all the time, every damn
Right.
day of his life at this point. So like we don't like, this is very obvious to me. So yeah, I think that all of that is on point. And the main thing is to remember that the narrative is the most important bit. And so how are we going to navigate that? How do you navigate where the narrative is relative to you, relative to all of the things that matter to you, relative to the geopolitical scale? All of that is what is actually happening here, most importantly. And
Yeah.
the narrative is loud as fuck. That's the other thing to remember with that Mercury on the North Node and with Mars. This is so loud. It is,
Yeah.
like Mercury in Pisces in a water sign is mute, right? We've mentioned that before. And so that's one of the things, that's why I brought up the two-sided nature of communication, because impression is as important as expression, right? So the way that you listen to information is going to be a very important piece of how this works. But with that North Node, which wants to increase whatever it touches, and then Mars, which is loud and brash by its nature, that is going to increase the volume of everything. And so loud, wrong information is the story of the day. And so we just need to be aware of that and in relation to that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that my brief analysis of the Ingress chart really, and what you were saying immediately, really do jive. They're kind of, they were saying the same thing. And I guess that the big takeaway too for me is that this is a great time to unplug and just not listen to your Facebook feed, to your Instagram feed, to any of that. This is a good time to listen to the trees, listen to the creek, listen to your heart. Not that, that's good anytime, right? But I think especially now when the signs are showing confused, loud, wrong information, just don't listen to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I actually was not going to move in that direction. Like, I am so pro listening to trees and listening to creeks and listening to your heart. I love that idea. And I think that that's a really good idea. What I typically think about, especially since we like Aries is so prominent here. So we're talking about Aries because it's the Ingress and everything. But then moving forward from this, then Mars is going to move into Aries, and we're going to see a conjunction between Mars and Saturn, as well as this Neptune and everything, right? And then Mercury is going to move in there, and it's going to be more. So there's like at the end of Aries season, there's this new moon in Aries that is just everybody in Aries. And it is so loud and terrible. I hate it. I don't like it at all, right? So, but one of the things that I say about Aries and Mars and Aries specifically a lot of times is that it is really, it front loads and it goes really hard. It sprints and then it gets tired. And so whenever, like I'm a Mars and Aries person, and so I take a nap every day. So because I'm really strong in the morning time. And then I get to about 2 p.m. and I'm just fucking trashed. I just can't do anything anymore. And so I just go to bed during that time. And then I have a second morning after that, and I'm much more productive in the evening than I could be otherwise, right? So what I'm thinking here is that it's probably going to be a really good idea to have schedule in breaks like that for ourselves. So if we
Yeah.
can schedule breaks for listening to the trees, listening to the creeks, this kind of thing, right? I don't think that unplugging is really going to be an option as much as we would like it to. You know, like I look, man, if I had a farm with 20 gallons of sap coming out of the trees and all of this, then I would be tempted to just be out there all the time also, right? I live in a much more urban environment than that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be involved in, like I make my living on social media and stuff like that. So like I'm going
Right.
to be in that space a lot. So for me, I also think that like if you're going to get any idea of what's true at all, then you're going to need to be able to engage with lots of different directions of information, lots of different vectors of information, right? So I understand that vector A is spinning me and probably untrue. And vector B is saying something completely different, also spinning me, also untrue. Maybe if I add three more sources to that, then I can conglomerate something that is at least functional for me, right?
Yeah.
So to my mind, that's actually more engagement, not less. So I would say more engagement with lots of scheduled breaks is
Okay.
probably the way that at least my plan is to navigate that.
Yeah.
And so actually I was thinking about this. I was as we were preparing for this episode and talking back and forth about how what we were going to talk about and how we were going to talk about it. One of AC, you've always been really good at asking this question, like, okay, so what's the medicine for this moment, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, you're the real herbalist in space. I took some herb classes and then dropped out like a real chump. So, but you were so legit with it. So if you were navigating somebody or treating somebody who was navigating, this probably looks like adrenal fatigue. This probably looks like not sleeping very well. This probably looks like overload. I would think wired and tired is probably going to be indicated in these kinds of skies. If you were dealing with that in an herbal, holistic medicine approach, how would you treat that?
With herbs, you mean? Like,
How, however you would treat it.
well, definitely nourishing with lots of nutritious food, space for rest, and encouraging them to spend time in nature or with things that are nourishing their spirit. And then as far as herbs, I'm thinking immediately like milky oats and lion's mane to support that neural connection, or ashwagandha if they're not already running hot, can be very helpful for somebody who's that like tired and wired and just adrenal fatigue. And things like Tulsi for the mood uplifting and Hawthorn for the heart. It kind of depends on what exactly is manifesting in that person specifically as far as what herbal direction, but it's going to be nourishing bone broths that they do meat, and mushrooms and foods that are rich in minerals and vitamins, lots of leafy greens and grounding root vegetables, and not so much of the sugar, dairy, wheat that are going to be inflammatory and
Hmm.
encourage that like high and then low crash. Then practices like bathing, like taking a bath, or foot bath, journaling. It kind of depends on what the person likes to do for recharge, whether it's like yoga or running or exercise. But yeah, that would be a few things that come to mind. It's a lot of like nourishing and avoiding the triggers that are hard to avoid, but trying to focus on that space of rest and digest rather than go, go, go.
Hmm. 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 Okay, so what I heard there was that nourishment is going to be a really big, it's like
Yeah.
the primary thing that you mentioned there. So it's
Mhm.
like if you're going too hard all the
Yeah.
time and there's too much bad information and all the rest of it, and it's going to be really easy to get crazy about that, then one of the things that could be good medicine here is just making sure that you are well nourished. And I heard not just nourishment of your body, but I also heard you say nourishing your spirit in some kind of way, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So what is that?
Or journaling or doing the thing that gives you that lift, that heart ping rather than like the thud, you know?
Mm,
Following that that joy, which can be difficult to do when you're feeling fatigued and drained and you just want to like crash out and rest or scroll on media, social media or something, but finding the things that are nourishing to your spirit.
mm. Yeah, it sounds like that is gonna require a lot of discipline also. Because
Yeah.
if you're in the place where all you want to do is crash out and scroll and doom scroll and stuff like that, then it's going to be something like I should not do that, but rather I should like journal about it or like this sounds like more work, right?
Yeah, it is.
Well, that's why I mean, I'm going back to the, taking some time to unplug, scheduling in
Mm,
some unplugging where you
hmm.
can, I mean, sitting with the trees or the creek or
Mhm.
the birds, because you don't have to do anything. You're just like with the nature, you know? But if you schedule it,
Mm.
then then you can scroll later.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's interesting to me. That makes me think that it makes me think about how rest is paradoxically accelerationist.
Hmm.
So you can get more done faster if you take breaks sometimes
Hmm.
rather than just working through the whole thing.
Mhm.
And that's a paradox that is easy to forget about, or that is easy to, it's like it's easy to be like, okay, well, I don't have time for rest. I don't have time for a break. I just got to work through this. I got to go so fast, especially since the world around me is accelerating at such a speed that I can't really keep up with it. And that's one of the things that we can notice astrologically is later after we go through all of this Aries madness, then kind of the next major thing that's happening is Uranus is going to move into Gemini for keepsies. And
Yeah.
so as Uranus moves into Gemini, then Uranus, that's the planet of surprises and disruption and left field dynamics and stuff like that. Uranus in Gemini, the sign of Mercury, that is associated with language and storytelling, and it's two-faced. It's maybe gonna lie a little bit, and it's maybe gonna be moving back and forth and all of that, right? Looks like it's very Gemini is also the name of a an AI that is made by Google, right? A large language model. So there's something here about and that Uranus moving into Gemini is going to make a trine to Pluto and Aquarius also. So we're very much looking at future technology. And if we think about the pace at which AI is advancing, then it is unprecedented, the rate of change that's happening, right? And so it looks very accelerationist. And so in a deeply accelerationist environment, then as the individual, it's going to be really easy to be like, oh man, I don't have time to rest because I got to keep up with everybody else. But paradoxically, perhaps scheduling time to rest, scheduling time to listen to trees and to breathe deeply and to nourish one's spirit and this kind of thing might actually help regular folks to keep up with the accelerationist environment because they're not burning out at the same rate that people who just work right through it could.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. And the other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking AC is in terms of nourishment, um, spending time with nature, taking a break, uh, gardening. If you're not gardening, this is a
Mm,
great time
Yeah.
to start gardening. Just try one plant, zucchini. or potatoes or tomato.
Why?
Well, zucchini generally produces a lot of.
Well, sure. Not why zucchini, why garden?
It's nourishing. Like you're
And
literally producing food, which is nourishing. You're getting your
Mm,
hands in the soil, which is
really
grounding.
yeah, your fingers in the soil is calming your nervous system and making you feel okay.
And it's something that you can actively do that connects you to nature and to the plant spirits and to the spirits of the ecosystem. Um, so for some people, just sitting with a tree can be too much or too not enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
hmm
But gardening is, in a way, like an active meditation. You're actively resting. Uh,
mm,
so then it can feel less like and sometimes rest is just a break is just something different. Instead of scrolling for an hour, you
mm,
take some time to be out working with weeding, harvesting, etc. Then you're resting that part of your brain. You're resting that by doing something else. So
mhm,
that's and also I'm thinking about that Jupiter in the second house. That Jupiter is really also holding down things, and like that's the medicine too, that Jupiter. And Jupiter likes things to grow, and Jupiter in the second house. Second house is also what you eat too.
mhm,
It's the mouth of the. So gardening to you're producing something to eat, you know.
hmm, hmm,
So
It is
that's
kind of crazy how much work it is to just maintain good health and how even like rest, like gardening is still like you might be sweating and like working your muscles, but you're resting your nervous system. And then like maybe some people like you like want to play music as a way of resting that like the brain part, but then you're like pumped after you play bass for a long time or drums for a long time. And then it also takes a lot of work if you're going to start a band or something and um play music with other people, like coordinating and booking shows and all of these things. But just it is work to be healthy in an unhealthy society. Just getting up and doing that exercise that you need and feeding yourself nourishing food. It's like a full-time job. And we also
mhm.
have full-time jobs. So it's like pretty tough to balance it all.
Mhm,
but what
Yeah.
you're saying is true, though. I think that taking scheduling time to rest or to do something that's it actually paradoxically helps you uh
In the long run.
yeah.
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, and I think that there is something about that Mercury retrograde in Pisces ruling the rising of the Ingress chart that does well with paradox. The thing that I say about Mercury in Pisces all the time, like Mercury doesn't, we say that Mercury doesn't do well in Pisces, and I don't, that's not exactly true. Like Maya Angelou, who is like the greatest poet who ever lived, had a Mercury retrograde conjunct Saturn in Pisces. And so that's like the most difficult Mercury you can possibly have. But she
Wow.
had it and then turned into the poet laureate. And
Yeah.
so what's going on there? So it's not that Mercury doesn't do a good job. It's that typically what we want from Mercury is discrete intelligibility.
Hmm.
So we want prose. We want something that makes sense at the beginning, middle, and end, and then all of it like makes sense and we can sort it properly. And what this is intelligibility that we really love. And so that is typically found with Mercury in Virgo. Virgo is very good for sorting small details into intelligible parts. Opposite to Virgo is Pisces. That's where Mercury is fallen. And so Mercury doesn't do the sorting of intelligible bits of information very well in that space, but rather cares about the whole. And so what we see there is the recognition of patterns or an understanding of paradox. We can see poetry coming through. We can see melody coming through. And so it's not that Mercury isn't functional in this space, but rather it's on its head in some kind of way. It's upside down. And so the idea of leaning into paradox, it's the, in The Incredibles, there's this idea that like when everyone's super, then no one is.
Yeah.
And so it's this idea that if you go all the way to the extreme, then you look around and you're like, hold on, I'm at the other extreme. How did this happen? And Mercury in Pisces, especially a Mercury retrograde in Pisces, especially a Mercury retrograde on the North Node on this point of darkness and shadow in Pisces, is very likely to find something useful or true in the paradox. And so if we can lean into that, if we can embody that paradox in some kind of way, I wonder if we might be able to create a life for ourselves that is more beneficial than we otherwise could have imagined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I wanted that I thought about when you were talking about the first time Mercury, well, first and second time Mercury in Pisces is this loudness. It's like there's this pattern that I see happening, and Trump's really good at this. Like he'll say, if he says something, then people will do the opposite of that. So in a way, it's an easy way to control people, actually, too.
For sure.
And it's like, so if you just do the opposite of what people say, then that's actually falling into their trap too, you know? And I see so many people falling into this trap, all, in all different ways of they see something that they're like, oh, this is wrong. The opposite must be true, but that's not true either. So I think that's one of the traps of Mercury in Pisces retrograde with the North Node, and it's
Right.
kind of,
So what if we thought outside of a linear model
right.
of
Yeah.
the, two poles, but think instead with a circle,
Uh-huh.
Yes.
like, so we don't have to do the opposite. What if we instead did something oblique?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mercury in a water sign does a really good job touching the oblique form of understanding. And I think that this is a good moment for us to find something about that can maybe be useful.
Yeah, and that's kind of also why I like the unplugging, even if it's just like a scheduled unplugging or a schedule, is because you kind of just want to step outside of the game for a second,
Right.
because then you can kind of see what's going on in the game.
Yeah. Get an outside perspective.
Right, and the thing is, like, for us and for the people who are listening to this, like, none of us are actually players in the bigger game, We're all we're all pawns if we play the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't necessarily have to have a take on the war in Iran
Right.
because I'm not the guy. I'm not making any decisions out here. So I don't have to be pro or anti or anything. I don't have to have a take on it because that's not my lane.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think too about what social media, Twitter and Instagram and all sorts of things have ingrained people like the importance of their opinions.
No one can be a pundit on social media.
And everybody's opinion, like they're so invested in their particular opinion about what's going on in the world. And my opinion lately has been basically your opinion doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. It's in the large
On that issue.
right on those, what matters, what actually matters.
Right. Your opinion matters. You need to have a take on where and when you plant which plant in your Zodiac garden.
For me, right.
Because that's where your take matters. That's where your opinion matters. And so perspective here. That's a really good frame. I like that frame a lot.
And when you're so invested in your opinion, it's really easy to manipulate you.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's what people are doing all the time on social media.
Sure. This is more of
So,
that, like, if I feel like I'm right, then it's because I have the right answer, rather
yeah,
than if so, like, if I have the right answer, then I've closed off all of the other answers because I have the right one, rather than being like, okay, well, there's a field out here, and maybe I don't need to lock myself into one thing.
And the thinker thinks what the prover proves, or what is that saying?
the prover,
The opposite, right? The prover, the think
something like
prover.
that. The prover proves what the thinker thinks.
Yes, that one. I'm a
Sure.
little dyslexic, but it's like we have that go to just with our own research, with what we look for online, what books we're reading, but now we have the added element of the algorithm and AI feeding us specific things based on our stats, like me and Isaac could look for something both on our own computers and get different answers based on who we are to the algorithm, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
That's
Makes it
the
even
Which
harder.
is itself probably a bit of an advantage because you have each other to be like, I searched this up. Would you search that up real quick and see what you're
Right.
getting? And so then now you
Yeah.
have two perspectives that
Yeah.
you can conglomerate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've come to the point where you it's not that like you can't really trust anything on the internet. And and I don't know if I want to get into this, but there's what's interesting to me about events that have happened over the last year has been how one event can be um the same event caught on camera. Different people with different opinions will see a different thing happening.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Entirely different thing happening.
From the same camera angle and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like that is real to them. And that's not even AI. But now we have AI where it's like, is Benjamin Netanyahu alive? I don't know. If he comes on
I
camera,
never met him either way.
look, right.
Yeah. Hmm.
Right. Um so yeah. So that's where I'm coming from with the unplug too. It's like the whole thing is I also understand with having multiple perspectives to get some kind of intuitive uh I hesitate to say truth, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have made it my job to predict the future. And so I am going to have my finger in a few different streams of information so
yeah,
that I can more accurately predict the future. I just mentioned a little while ago how I've been taking a bunch of L's. I would like to take fewer L's. And
yeah,
so I'm going to try to improve my model, that of my predictive model, you know what I mean? And I think that this is going to be something that like you're not going to get away from the information environment. So
right.
management is going to be the move here. How do we actually manage this thing,
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so what else should people know about this quarter and what's going on?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about Uranus and Gemini a little more. So Uranus is going to move into Gemini in late April. And that I mentioned before that looks like an acceleration of technological progress. Clearly, it looks like a lot wants to happen in the space of AI. And
Yeah.
so, what does this mean for us? Well, there's a couple of things here that I think are going to be important. First is that the language piece, I think, is going to be a really big deal moving forward. And so, I think that it's probably going to be a very important play for each of us to learn to speak more than one language. And so I mean that in a literal sense, like if you can be bilingual, then that's probably going to be a good look for you. I've personally spent a bunch of time learning Spanish recently. I have a background in that, and so that was easy enough for me to do. But I like speak Spanish way better now than I did a year ago because I've
Awesome.
put some into that. So I have no idea how that's going to help me, but I think that being able to think in different languages is probably going to be useful while Uranus is in the sign of two faces. Something
Uh-huh.
about that seems resonant, and I feel like that's going to be a useful play, even if I can't exactly see a use case for it immediately. And in fact, not being able to see the use case immediately is one of the main takeaways that I think is going to be really important about Uranus and Gemini. So Uranus and Gemini is making this trine to Pluto and Aquarius. And so that looks like a lot of really quick technological innovations that are clearly going to be tied to AI. And so one of the things that I was learning recently about the printing press, and I didn't know that Gutenberg, the inventor of the printing press, died broken alone.
Went bankrupt.
Yeah, I
Yep.
didn't know that.
I
So,
just learned that too.
word. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason for that is because he didn't have a distribution mechanism.
Yeah.
So he could print all these books, and it was super expensive to print all these books because he like the paper was not paper at that time, and so they had to there was all printed on leather effectively, and
Mm.
so it was all of this startup cost, and then like two books would sell in his town, and then that was it, and then he's just got all these books that he doesn't know what to do with, and so he just goes bankrupt. And so then his students pick it up and they're like, okay, we're going to do it. And the same thing happens to them. They go bankrupt and then they flee their debts. They're just like, they're about to go to debtor's prison. They're like, nah, we're not doing this. And so they leave and then they arrive in Venice. And Venice is the place, is it's the changeover place, right? It's the hub.
Yeah.
And so they arrive there, and that's when they can start to sell these books to traders who are going to all these other places. And so there they find the distribution mechanism. So it takes like 40 years for the printing press to turn into something that is legitimately profitable. And then it turns to all the books that we have now, right? And so it turns into this amazing innovation, but it takes a long time for it to figure out how to become profitable. And so that's the space that we're in right now as far as AI is concerned, is that like we can clearly see that AI is super powerful. We can clearly see that it's losing a lot of money. No one knows what to do about that. And so what is happening here? Well, I think that Uranus and Gemini trine to Pluto and Aquarius is likely to be really good for working out use cases. So I'm going to guess that most of the listeners to this podcast are probably not super pro AI
Right.
because of environmental concerns, because of the concerns around concentrating power into the few hands of some tech oligarchs and stuff like that. But the point that I've been making for a little while is I think you should be using AI for the same reason that I think you should be using astrology. And
Mhm.
that is, it is clearly very powerful. And I don't know why you would leave all that power on the table for someone else to have and not for you. So this is going to be a time where, and one of the things about AI is that it has the power to be an extremely democratizing force. It is in the hands of all people who have a phone, which is basically all people at this point. And so can you come up with use cases that will help you to be more profitable, more useful in the marketplace of ideas, marketplace of coins, and all the rest of that? Can you find ways, good ideas, right? Uranus and Gemini is going to be really good for outside of the box ideas, especially making this trine to Pluto and Aquarius. Pluto and Aquarius is also associated with things like the cotton gin. I think I might have mentioned the cotton gin before. The cotton gin takes this. It takes this process of making textiles and automates it and makes it much more profitable and much easier for one person to do. One person can do the job of a team. And so it makes the whole process much better. Now, what that ends up doing is it extends the life of slavery in the United States. And so that is, it's some more of this, like, I don't necessarily need to make a moral judgment about this. I don't need to have a take on that necessarily. What we can see is that the economic process gets further life from this than you would have thought before that innovation happened. And so we're at a moment now historically where it's like late stage capitalism, we're at the very end of things, right? Or are we? So if you are banking on the collapse of things, then that might not be what's happening right now. We might get this cotton gin style innovation that extends the life of the thing. And so rather than counting on collapse, what if you counted on yourself coming up with good use cases that could be economically beneficial for you and the generation that comes after you?
Mm.
So this is a really good time to, especially if you're thinking with different languages and other ways of communicating or understanding the world. If you don't speak another language already, now's a really good time to learn code. Vibe coding has never been easier. Like, now's a good time. Or if you are in software engineering or something like that, this is your moment. So how can you get into, like, there is wind in those sails right now, or at least beginning in late April. When Uranus moves into Gemini, there's wind in those sails around software engineering and developing use cases that haven't even been thought of yet. This gets into that unknown territory. You haven't thought the thoughts that are the precursor to the thoughts that bring the good ideas yet. And so how can you get into that space where you're thinking those kinds of thoughts, and then that turn into something that is economically and otherwise beneficial for you and your team?
Hmm. That's an interest. I am a bit of a Luddite, but I think that's a good take. So,
Hell yeah.
I don't know how much I'm going to personally use AI, LLMs, but we'll see. Well, I can see that Uranus in Gemini, there's wind in that sail for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And
You're
well,
trying to learn another language though, Sanskrit and
yeah.
um
I mean, even astrology is another language,
yeah,
right?
true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So to the Luddite perspective,
Yeah.
like, I would, so like your advice recently was unplug, right? And I do think that this is like good advice for, um, you know, getting your heart to back to, like, getting your heart rate variability to a place that's good for you, and these kinds of things, right? Like, I love the idea of unplugging and drinking your little tree sap and all of that. Like, this is a beautiful lifestyle that I hope that you love and enjoy. I don't think that it's necessarily available to most people. And
Hmm.
Yeah.
so, given that environment, given that we are awash in all of this information that's wild and crazy and all of this, right? We are going to have to participate in the thing. And all right, so Luddites are a political movement that was against the Industrial Revolution, right? And so
Right.
the Industrial Revolution happens, and they're like, no, we want to do things the old ways. And they ultimately, so it's like a workers' movement, effectively. You know what I mean? Like, there
Yeah.
are people who are like the lamplighters and stuff like that. So the lamplighters are people who, after the sun goes down, then they go around and they light the street lamps so that there'll be a little bit of light at night, right? And so then the Industrial Revolution happens, and we start doing it electrically. And I think that you would have a hard time looking back on that and being like, electricity wasn't the move here. You know what I mean? Like, this is clearly a superior way of doing things. And yes, it means that the lamplighters lost their jobs, but these are the
Right.
breaks sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, um, like when I see AI and LLMs, it there's certainly a lot of opportunity for people. Um, and it might be in your best interest to learn the language. Um, I'm hesitant to believe that it will be as I think it'll definitely be a big deal. It is, um, but I think it's also likely to be used in the hands of, as it becomes. So if all of the AI companies go bankrupt, right?
Mhm.
Um, which is very possible, and a bunch of money just like vanishes, that's one way to get rid of money. But extra money, inflation maybe. Um, but the people who have access to the really good AI, which is what I think is where the real business is going to be happening with like what people have available to them maybe is not the highest quality LLMs, you know?
E- Fair enough. I think that what is available to the regular consumer right now is doing a lot. Can can get a
Yeah.
lot of work done. And if you can cough up the $200 a month, I have heard great things about that as well. And $200 a month is a lot of money, but it's like not an unreachable sum of money for most Americans, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's especially if you have a thing that you're trying to do. Anyway, that's not my main point here. One of the things that I
Right.
want to get to is so if you learn to speak two languages,
Yeah.
then I think that there's a really good chance that double speak become in the 1984 Orwellian sense becomes the
Uh-huh.
language of the day. And so you're
Uh-huh.
gonna need to, especially as AI starts writing all of the news and all of these kinds of things, you're gonna need to be able to decode what is happening, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna say something, and then there's another layer of meaning that you're gonna need to be able to pick up on that
Yeah.
isn't like it's the quiet part that they're not saying out loud, right?
Yeah.
And so in learning to code switch or learning another language or something like that, you're going to be able to increase your ability to understand what's happening, even though lies are being told to your face.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that's great advice for everybody.
I don't hear you anymore.
Oh. Oh no. You don't hear me?
Weird.
You still don't hear me?
That's so weird. Um,
You still don't hear me? You
Nope.
don't hear
okay,
me?
noise removal.
Hello?
Hello? Anything?
Nothing.
Okay.
You can still hear me
Uh,
though, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Let's just unplug and we plug in the mic.
Hear us now? Can you hear us
Can you
now?
hear us now? Anything? 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 No?
Nothing.
Well,
Maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. Maybe I can. Maybe it's.
Okay, let's see that. Now. La 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 la.
Ah, yes, 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 yes.
La
It
la la.
was me. It was my. It was on my end.
Oh, okay.
okay.
I had a
Well,
speaker die.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Mercury
Yeah.
retrograde.
Sun.
Yeah, totally, totally.
That was
Uh,
mild.
well, yeah, so I think that's useful information for everybody. And I also like what you're saying, learn another language, whether that's how to work with AI or whether that's Spanish or whether that's astrology. Um, I think that's good advice.
Yeah, doing our best, doing our best out here.
The
Yeah.
language of the trees.
Yeah.
Learning that.
Yeah. Oh, that was the other thing that I wanted to say about the Luddites and stuff is that
Mhm.
so there is a certain um benefit to engaging with the old ways.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be a really important deal to notice the difference between old ways and ancient ways.
Ah.
So the
Yes.
lamplighters we could think of as being old,
Right.
but there is a certain kind of wisdom that is maybe the language of the trees or something like this that is more ancient than that. And that kind of wisdom endures through all epochs, through all eras. It doesn't matter what's going on. The stars have presided over everything forever, always. And so if we can tap into ancient ways, if we can maybe bypass, it's a little bit like when you start doing ancestor work and you're like, oh, my most recent ancestors for the last like 4 generations were the most terrible racist people who ever lived. Then like, what if we just skip that and go back to a time when all of us were indigenous? Those people are still our ancestors and still care that we do well. And so what if we go to that wisdom? And so there's a useful distinction between old and ancient that I think if we can pull some of the ancient wisdom forward into the AI and forward age, the age of future robots, then I think that wisdom will still have great utility, even though it will be applied in ways that the ancients could not have possibly imagined.
Yeah. I really like that distinction between old ways and
Yeah.
ancient ways. And I think that in a lot of ways, it's in the long run for the everyday people, it's helpful to get in touch with those ancient ways and growing your own food and knowing people who do and learning the language of the trees. But also in the short term, I think that it's very possible that learning how to use the LLMs can be helpful for getting through this period where things, we're in a crisis period and things are probably just going to get worse before they get better, before they get worse, before they get better. Anyway, but we're in a particularly, I think, intense, we're on the precipice of a particularly intense crisis period, the likes of which we probably haven't seen before.
Certainly.
I worry about the water with the AI. That's my main concern is like, are we gonna just use it all? Because that evaporates after you use it. It's like it's not, there's no recycling that water after like you cool down those servers. That's just evaporating into the air, So I like water. I like having water on the planet.
Same.
And so
Well, I also wonder
I'm worried about like the cat memes using all of this energy. It's like, can there be some guardrails maybe where we're using AI for things that are advancing ourselves in society, not like, so I don't know. It's a little bit.
Well, the other thing is that it's possible that the only way that people like us have access to these forms of AI is because it's being subsidized by the AI bubble, and that if and when that pops, AI will be only available to people who can spend $1,000 a month on it. So
Indeed, we shall see. We shall see.
Yeah.
I am still in the camp of, especially during Saturn in Aries, which I think of as pirate season. I am very much about like there are no rules, and you should take whatever advantages you have. Like I saw a meme the other day where somebody was like, "Why are you paying all this money for Claude Code when the Chipotle chat bot is free?" And it was like, yeah, I was asking for code from the chat bot, from the Chipotle bot. It was like, yes,
Brilliant.
I want to buy a burrito, but before I can do that, I need some code. And it was like, oh yeah, here, no problem. Here's some code for you. So like,
there will always be workarounds like that. You're like,
that's
like,
what I'm saying. Yeah. Like
pirate.
it's pirate season out here.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
I also agree with you there. Like right now we have access to AI. We don't know what the future is going to be. It might behoove you to learn how to work with it, and use whatever options you have. And everyone's options are different, So
this is more of that, like, if I know that AI is wrong, then I have the answer already.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, so do we have any final thoughts about this arc of the cycle?
The last thing that I would say here is that it looks like it is very loud. It is very brash. It is extremely malefic. This quarter is very, very malefic. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pick your battles.
Uh-huh.
That's too many. Choose fewer battles than that. That's still too many battles. Put some back.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. I'm only interested in battling with whatever pests are going to be attacking my
Yeah,
zucchini.
man, pestilence and plague. Yeah, for real.
I'm being a little glib, but I like that. I like that perspective too. Yeah,
You
no
don't
battle.
have to have a take on everything. You don't have to fight every
Right,
battle. You just
right.
you need to do the ones that you need to do
Yeah,
and limit that. Fewer battles is better.
yeah.
Mhm.
You don't have to die on every hill.
No,
Mhm.
you only have so many lifetimes anyway, right?
I
It
don't know
gets
about
old.
that. There's the universe seems like it's
Going.
ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like, ooh.
Well, it does get old dying on a hill every
Mhm.
For sure. For sure. Yeah,
few
yeah, yeah.
minutes.
Anyway, thank y'all so much. I
Yeah,
super appreciate hanging out with y'all. I love talking with y'all every quarter. I'm so glad that we get to do this.
I know, me too. Thank you, Zam.
likewise. Okay. Well,
Cheers. Well,
cheers. Happy spring.